Welcome to Fridays with Vistage. My name is Bill Black. I'm a Vistage member and speaker, and your moderator for today's webinar entitled The New Recruiting Paradigm, How to Get Smarter, Faster, and More Strategic. You know, there are more job openings than people to fill them these days, so it's time to get serious about being the best company you can possibly be. You must shift your recruiting paradigm and put significant resources into winning great people so your company can grow. The talent scarcity is putting more pressure on HR to evolve at a rapid pace. In this webinar, you'll learn creative ideas to attract diverse candidates and individualize their experience in your recruiting process. Today's speaker is Kathleen Quinn Votaw, Vistage member and speaker, author, and CEO of TalenTrust. Kathleen has decades of earning accolades in the staffing industry. However, she determined that traditional models don't always serve the best interest of clients. She vowed to disrupt the stagnant staffing and recruiting industry. In 2003, Kathleen launched TalentTrust to help companies find, keep, and grow the best people. Her firm's expert team collaborates closely with executives to identify the root causes and often interrelated issues behind a company's human capital challenges. As a longtime Vistage member, Kathleen attributes much of her firm's growth to participation in the Vistage community. Kathleen is a speaker and the author of a book titled Solve the People Puzzle: How High-Growth Companies Attract and Retain Top Talent. Ladies and gentlemen, Kathleen Quinn Votaw.
Thank you, Bill. I'm very thrilled to be here at Fridays with Vistage. Hello, lovely Vistage people. I'm not going to stay on video long because it steals my connectivity, but I wanted to tell you that this is a meat and potatoes webinar. It's not an appetizer. It's not a salad with protein. It's meat, potatoes, and vegetables. It's the full course, maybe even some wine pairing. So get out your pens and paper and let's make sure we dig into this so we can make sure that you have all the information for the new recruiting paradigm. So I'm going to go off video now. Don't worry, my content will still be here. And I wanted to kind of set the stage with some important things we need to be thinking about. Most of you, Vistage CEOs, list hiring and retention as your top concern for 2019. My friend and colleague Joe Galvin, who's our Chief Research Officer, it's still one of the top 3 concerns because there's a supply and demand issue. The current marketplace is driven by candidates. Talent picks you versus you picking them. They're driving the bus. I know if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say this before, but I need to emphasize that you need to put a plan in place now. Stop waiting. The metrics are against you if you don't have something in place that will help you overcome this important supply and demand issue we have. So let's get started. And again, I want to talk to you about some statistics. Unemployment is at its lowest since 2000. We all know that. 60% of employees are struggling to fill jobs, but most importantly, they're not capturing revenue. Not filling jobs is one thing, but not capturing the value, the revenue that you need to grow your business is staggering. And Gallup still reports that people are unengaged. Really, 53% of people are just not digging it when they come work for you. And so there's a real shift that needs to take place. So we make sure people are working for us versus against us, that we're not fragmented, that we have people who are engaged, who are really trying to drive the initiatives and the values and the mission that we have in our companies versus working against us. And as some of you might have heard, being detractors from our brand. So the low engagement is rooted in that employment brand and what you stand for. So I'm going to talk about 3 really high-level key stats that you need to focus on, and then I'm going to break it apart so you can take some, maybe 1, 2, 3 different actions back to your environments, talk internally about it, and definitely do something different than you're doing today. That's my challenge to you. We're also going to have a Q&A session. Bill's going to lead that at the end. So I would love to have a webinar where you guys could just pummel me with questions, but I don't think Vistage will let me do that. So take advantage of my subject matter expertise and my 30 years in this world, and please send your questions to Bill. That would be really helpful for everybody. So the first thing I want to talk about is it's time to get more strategic. It's not time to think about it, it's time to do something about it. Get your people together, give HR a seat at the table, and I'm going to really help you understand what that means. My 2019 hiring guide, step number 1 is making sure that HR has that vital seat at the table versus a placeholder, and make sure they're treating recruitment as a sales and marketing process, not as an administrative task. And it might mean that you have to make some changes. While you're giving them a seat at the table, think about a couple things. You're more than likely, like many people, have an outdated view of HR. You might envision, if you're thinking for a minute, of, Lily Tomlin in her role, 1 ringy-dingy, 2 ringy-dingy. Well, HR needs to move into a very strategic business model. We can't apply our old thinking to where we need to go. HR needs to be strategic. They need to make sure the company is driving to profitability. And it's really going to be impossible to achieve your business goals without a strategic human resources person function in place, regardless of your size. So what do I mean by that? I want to make sure that if you don't already have somebody in this human capital space, human capital is another phrase for human resources. Depending on the size of your company, the title could be CHRO, which stands for Chief Human Resources Officer. It could be Chief People Officer, CPO, VP of HR, Vice President of HR. It could be, depending on size, Talent Acquisition Director. I don't care what you call it. It's just somebody who owns this function and is strategic about it. And I caution you, because not all human capital, human resources leaders are created equal. So it's going to be really important that your selection process, when you bring someone in this function, is bulletproof. So you make sure that you know who you're bringing on and how they're going to be able to affect change in human capital and human resources in your organization. You can't grow your business without them. And I'm sorry to tell you, this isn't a short-term problem. This is the next 10-year problem. That over the next 10 years, finding and keeping people in order to grow your business is going to be a big dang deal. My friends at ITR in New Hampshire are telling you the same thing, and they're not even in my business. They're economic gurus, and they're telling you the same thing. So hopefully the emphasis on this today will be helpful for you. So what does it mean for you to have a strategic human resources management process? The focus of strategic HR is less about serving the best interest of the employees and more about harnessing and channeling human potential to benefit the business as a whole. I'm going to say that again. The focus of strategic HR is less about serving the best interest of the employees and more about harnessing and challenging the human potential to benefit the business as a whole. Now that's a shift. Sometimes people think that HR exists to give a voice to the employees. Now sure, there's employee relations, but human resources and human capital in a strategic manner is to better the business as a whole. So that's why your selection is going to be vitally important to getting this right and getting this person right in your organization. So let's unpack this a little bit more. What does it look like? What are you looking for in your selection process? And as Nell said, you're going to get a PDF, or Lori, Nell or Lori, one of my wonderful partners, they said you're going to get a PDF of this presentation. So don't worry about it. You'll have these steps. So what does it look like? Here's some of the trends that are really important to add to your selection piece. HR needs to get more strategic and future focused. So one of the great Vistage speakers talks about time span. I think his name is Tom Foster. Bill, you might remember his name. I think his name is Tom Foster. And he talks about the ability to think forward. Sometimes hourly workers think in hours. Sometimes executives think in quarters. How far focused can somebody be? How future oriented can they be? Next, how are they business minded? Sometimes people who are in human capital want to help people, and I think that's great. And if you know me, I love people too. But there's a point where they need to have a business acumen. What is their business acumen? What have they done in business? What do they know about business? Here's a key question. Do they know how to read a P&L and a balance sheet? That would be a really great selection process question. Next, do they have the marketing expertise and perspective on that employment brand that I keep beating the drum about? How are they going to help establish this employment brand with their colleagues in marketing? Then, central focus on candidate experience. If you're not treating your candidates well, who you want to work with, guess what? They're not going to pick you, because what did I say earlier? They're picking you versus you picking them. And then they need to focus on the business impact, not on the people only aspect, but the business aspect. How are they using data? What are they going to measure? I measure revenue, gross margin, profitability, because I'm a business owner too. I'm a Vistage member owner too. And I get better by measuring certain metrics. In their function, what are the most important metrics to measure? Ask them and then measure it against what you believe are the most important human capital metrics in your company. And then make sure that they have relationships with people who can serve your company. Human capital is a big function in companies. One person or one function can't do it all. Who are going to be their business partners to help get your organization more strategic around human capital? They have to have let's call it a consortium of people that they would turn to for expertise in technology and in data and in marketing and in sourcing, et cetera, to make sure that they're a well-rounded person that can make it happen for you. Hopefully that's been helpful in unpacking this a little bit more for you. Next, I want to talk about treating recruitment as a sales process. And I have a lot of slides on this that can really help you go back to your organizations and map out for you, write up a blueprint of what you're going to do. I invite you to copy this and use it in your organization. And how are you going to address it? If you need help, I'm here for you, but you can do some of this on your own. First thing is, don't just post and pray. It's not the field of dreams. If you build it, they will not come. I'm so sorry to tell you that. You must have a strategy. You must work on the strategy. You must put the same rigor around recruitment as you do attracting your customers. We can't leave recruitment to on the shelf anymore, like Elf on the Shelf. We have to make sure that we are designing our recruitment process, putting marketing effort around it, sales marketing and effort around it, and being quite intentional. And for any CEOs on the phone, I'm sorry, you're going to have to invest some of your dollars to a recruitment process. It is going to cost money, and it is going to take time, and it is going to take expertise, just like sales and marketing does to attract your customers. That's the bad news. However, I keep preaching this to the entire Vistage community because I know over time you'll adopt it. And as I've always mentioned, that it takes 8 to 12 touches for people to adopt anything. So I'm going to keep beating this drum as well. So let's look at this a little bit more. What does it mean to treat recruitment as a sales process? Here's our funnel that we suggest every Vistage member should employ to some extent within their company. Remember, it takes 8 to 12 touch points for anybody to adopt your message, including you guys on this Fridays with Vistage webinar. Some of you might have even heard me before and you're like, oh, she said all this before. Well, have you done it? Let's be honest. Have you done it? So the first step, employment branding. Who are you and what do you stand for to the candidate audience? That's so important. What's your message to them? Get your marketing people to actually write down what's your employment message? What's your message to your candidate, to the person you want to work for you, not only in your company, but for your culture in your company and for each department. That's step one. Step two is lead generation. Let's look at the supply and demand in your area for the people you're looking for. And remember, it takes a lot of leads to really make a hire. The average throughout the country is about 100 to 1. So you're going to have to fill a lot of people into the top of the funnel. You might like this analogy. Sometimes you have to kiss a lot of toes to get your prince. To get your prince. So ladies out there, you know that. Some guys out there, you might know that too, but it's 100 to 1. And then you want to make sure you're focusing your lead generation on the people who are passive candidates. Passive candidates is an overused phrase, but what it means is there's about 30% of the population who will apply to an ad. And then 70% of the people who are potential candidates will never, ever respond to an advertisement you post. So how are you going to pull the 70% into the conversation? We obviously have tools and systems and processes to do that. But one exercise you could do internally is where can we go to get active candidates? One great idea is Vistage. Vistage has a networks, I think 22 active networks now, I believe. So that's one place. We have discussion boards. You know, if you have an office in California and you're hiring somebody in Boston, well, guess what? One of your Vistage members out of 23,000 Vistage members might know somebody who's moving from San Fran to Boston. Use what you pay for. And we have a wonderful network here that you can leverage. And I find that many people aren't leveraging. Other things that you can leverage is any trade associations you belong to. Most of them have a network and community you can leverage, which is really cool. Also, make sure you have some automated sourcing tools and do some research. Many people use LinkedIn and post on LinkedIn, and that's a great tool, people, but that's it's not strategic, that's just a tactic. What research are you doing to know who are the leaders in your industry? Put them into the top of your funnel and then engage them in conversation, which is the next point I want to focus on. Candidate engagement, just because you put them in the top of the funnel doesn't mean they're going to talk to you, right? Our prospective clients just don't talk to us because we've identified them as a lead. Likewise, our candidates just don't talk to us because we have identified them as a lead. They might not even know we have identified them as a lead. So be bold. Maybe send an email to them saying, hey, Bill, I think you're pretty awesome and I love your voice. Would you like to come work for me on radio? Using Bill as a great example. He wouldn't know whether I'm targeting him or not if I at least don't tell him. So start with communicating. Make sure you start developing a relationship with these people. Use the drip campaign. Use an applicant tracking system. We like iSIMS at TalenTrust, and drip market to the candidates you put in the top of the lead funnel. Make sure you create opportunities for them to engage with your culture, and make sure you use social media in your engagement campaigns. Show people how wonderful you are, what you do at your company, and why people should care and want to join your firm. Start talking about it. Don't be like the naysayers who say, oh, I never use social media. I hate Facebook. I hate social media. Well, guess what? I have news for you. The emerging generations, which are the millennials and the Gen Zs, are going to be over 75% of the workforce by 2020. So if you're not going to communicate to them the way they want to be communicated, which is social media, you're going to lose. So do you want your biases to keep you out of the conversation with a great candidate? I don't think so. Next step I want you to focus on is candidate screening and assessments. Develop a KPI. If you're Vistage members, you know that stands for Key Performance Indicators, or something like a scorecard, a one-page scorecard that you can actually measure qualitatively and quantitatively how people respond to your questions, culture questions, and functional questions. Also, please use a assessment. One of the great national sponsors of Vistage, like myself, I'm a national sponsor as well, but there's a great company called Predictive Index. They have a great assessment tool that can help take some of the guesswork out of hiring. There's also a great tool called Preview. There's another tool called Predictive Index. There's so many assessment tools. Make sure you measure alignment and measure functional capacity. Do they have the thinking style and behavioral style to do the job? Will they do the job? And do they align with your expectations? There's great tools out there that can take this guesswork out of it. So my advice is please get a scorecard, also known as a KPI, and get an assessment. I don't know what you're waiting for. Do it today. If that's your one takeaway, call Predictive Index. Mike Zaney's a great guy. He'll take your call. Tell him I told you to call. The next step I want you to talk about is start interviewing only a select few. I don't want you to interview too many people because in this candidate screening and assessment, you're going to filter out anybody who doesn't fit your culture or fit the function. Now we're going to interview the select few. I'd say 3 to 6 is a great number. If you are interviewing 15, 20, 30 people, guess what? You have a problem in the top 4 steps I already outlined. Something's wrong with your employment branding, your lead gen, your candidate engagement, and your screening. If you have to interview more than 6 people, you've got a problem in the top of the funnel. So once you get here, you want to interview a select few. 3 to 6 is the right number. Make sure you are selling the opportunity because remember, they're choosing you because they've got choice. They're choosing you, they have choice. Highlight why you are different. Ask some behavioral-based interview questions. I have a 15-page list of behavioral-based interview questions, and if your Vistage chair hires me as a speaker, I will share it with you. But you can Google it. There are behavioral-based interview questions. Just go onto Google and key in behavioral-based interview questions and make sure you ask for it by function. You can help yourself in this regard. But many of the members that I've spoken to, I give this to them after I speak to them. And then please make sure that you review actual work product. So what do I mean by work product? So it's easiest to talk about in sales, but you can also interview for work product in a technology capacity, a finance capacity, an engineering capacity, and I'll give you a couple them. So in a sales capacity, you can ask them to put together a PowerPoint and a pitch for how they would pitch them to you to work for your company. They know them, so you're not asking them to reinvent something. They should be able to pitch themselves well in a sales presentation. In marketing, ask them to write, because marketing has a lot of writing involved, ask them to write some campaigns, maybe for the candidate audience, maybe for a specific audience that you're trying to attract. In engineering, you can have them put together a flow chart. You can have them put together a CAD drawing. In finance, create a complex financial Excel spreadsheet and have them identify the errors. So Make them prove it, because I get from people a lot in the interview process, people lie. And, I believe that most people are going to come with their best intentions and their best self. But in the event that somebody is misrepresenting themselves, go to a work product piece of your interview. It's a great way to ferret out anybody who might be misrepresenting their skill set. And then make sure you dig. Dig. Again, if that's one key takeaway, that's a good one. Don't take things at face value. Ask follow-up questions. Make sure you follow up on the assessment and identify any gaps. Most times, interviewers who are untrained will not ask the follow-up questions. They'll ask a question like, well, did you have a sales quota? And somebody will say, yes, I had a sales quota of 500,000. Well, then they don't know how to dig into, well, how was that sales quota achieved? How did you design that? Who did you get the leads, or did you have to generate the leads yourself? Were you the only one involved in that, in attaining that client? So really digging into it so you understand what the person that you're evaluating did versus what the company did. I always coach our clients here, beware pronouns. Many people talk about the collective we versus I. Really probe for the I. What did I do? How did you perform? What was your accountability versus the we factor? So that's going to be important, all those pieces in interviewing a select few. And then last but not least is make sure that your offer is sound. There's all kinds of tools. We use PayScale as a great tool to make sure that you are offering the right compensation for the right job in the right geographic area at your size company. Don't be cheap. I have an article on my blog. You can go to TalenTrust.com, click on resources, and I have a blog. One of my articles recently was Don't Be Cheap. Make sure you're paying market or what other people would pay for these great people. Also, be prepared to negotiate. I think it's really important that people negotiate and advocate for themselves. So don't be surprised if a candidate comes back to you and asks for some considerations on the offer. I would actually be surprised if somebody didn't. I would want somebody working for me who actually advocates for themselves and has a voice. I find often that employers are surprised that people might actually advocate for themselves. I think it's a great thing. Be prepared and figure out where are your negotiation points. One really good lever to pull in a negotiation for a new hire is time. T-I-M-E, time. Give them more time away or time with their family. And then make sure you have a well-executed onboarding plan. I was in San Antonio with Charles Martin, great Vistage chair, earlier in March. And, it's April now. So in March, second week of March. And Charles, one of his members really struggles with onboarding. So we sent him an outline of what a good 6-month onboarding plan looks like. And yes, onboarding is a 6-month investment. It's not a 1-week orientation or a, hey, nice to meet you. Here's your phone. Here's your computer. Want to go out for lunch? See you later. Good luck. That's barely an orientation plan. Make sure it's well executed because you want to make sure people are connecting with your brand, who you are, who your clients are, what good looks like, why people work for the company. They want to meet the leadership. There's a whole bunch of stuff to focus on. And it could be a whole Fridays with Vistage webinar, so I'm not going to get in the weeds here. So that is kind of the top, that's the funnel. That's what we bring our clients through. That's the magic. That's recruitment as the sales process. And do yourself a favor, too. Make sure you treat candidates as individuals. don't you want to be treated well by your employer, by your employees? The primary reason candidates reject job offers is because of the way they were treated during the hiring process. So what have you done to train your hiring managers on how to assess and treat this valuable candidate asset in this tight inventory marketplace? We have to make sure hiring managers are laser focused on creating a really positive, open communication, end-to-end experience for diverse candidates. You know, a significant part of recruiting is actually selling the candidate on why they should really choose you and building relationships. So it's important that communication is clear and frequent. Think about it. When people are looking for a job, they're at their most vulnerable place ever. They just don't even feel worthy. So the more you can communicate, the better. Make sure it's really, the process is smooth and easy and well engineered. The interactions are personal and respectful. They treat each candidate as you would want to be treated and as a customer who might choose you. And after the hiring decision is made, make sure that there's positive engagement with really thoughtful onboarding, as I mentioned in the last slide, that ensures this person feels welcome, important, confident, and really ready to jump in. Because here's the thing, they still have choice even when you have made the offer and even when they have said yes. Because good candidates are hard to find, and you have to assume that these people are interviewing with multiple companies. So how are you going to keep them engaged with you, who you are, what you do, while other people are marketing to them? Let me give you a really good example. It's aligned, but it's not really exactly aligned, but you'll get it. My son, John, is 18, and he's been choosing colleges. He chose 5 colleges to apply to, and yes, proud mama is very proud he got into all 5. But however, one of those colleges distinguished themselves hugely because they put themselves in John's shoes. It was Augustana College. That's where he's ended up going. Those people had a marketing machine to make John feel incredibly special and wanted. That was better than the other 4 institutions. They were not even existent. They had postcards that I know somebody else sent for the recruiter, but it doesn't matter. John felt special. So apply that example to how you can make your candidates feel special. And of course, in my business, where my job is to bring knowledge to all of you, I'm using this as a great example, and I'm keeping the postcards. I'm going to bring it to my member speaking engagements, because you guys will be blown away if I see you at one of your member meetings at what this college did and invested in getting him to yes. That's key. They got my son to yes. And what are you doing to get your candidates to yes? So I'm going to do a little quiz with you now. So I want you to have a pen in hand, a piece of paper in front of you, and I want to see how you're going to grade yourself. So We Love Burson, which is a division of Deloitte & Touche. They're great thought leaders in talent acquisition. And you can go to their website and pull down this report. They have an annual report on talent acquisition, but this is a cool thing that we use in our report cards and our gap analysis with our clients. So I want to use this with you now. So where would you grade yourself? So there's level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do you think you have a level 1 recruiting environment, which is reactive and tactical? Recruiters' function is really order takers for the hiring managers. They post and pray, minimal hiring standards, and mostly no initiative or strategy. Are you at level 1? Or are you at level 2, where there's some processes and technologies that are standardized across the organization? There's strong relationships with hiring managers and human resources. and there's a good way to assess candidates against the job requirements. Or are you level 3? You're integrated talent acquisition. Fully integrated with the human capital, human resources. You've got talent management functions. The organization has a very effective social media campaign, a very powerful employment brand, and a robust lead generation plan. Or are you at level 4, optimized talent acquisition, where talent acquisition and human capital are strategic, they're partners with the business, they're focus center, they're forecasting external forces, they're agile, they can move, they can pivot. The organization is committed to investing in this process. Take a minute, write down the number. Where are you? Most companies that we work with, and we work with a lot throughout the country in many different industries across functions, they're usually at level 1. Some are, very few get to level 2 when we assess them, but some are even at a 0. So be honest with yourself. Where are we starting? And the first step to any good plan is, where do I need to start to build on my talent acquisition and my culture plan? It's really important to know thyself in order to build upon it. So step 2, get smarter. There's a lot of good information out there, and I've said a lot of those things to you in this webinar so far. Bersin is a great tool. His name is Josh Bersin, B-E-R-S-I-N. I always trip on that name. But you can actually download his report every single year. He's a thought leader in talent acquisition. We've been following him for 10 years. We know this stuff because we're following him, and I've been in this industry for 30 years. So what thought leaders are you following? The next thing is, I have so many resources for you on my website. Understand the major trends. Vistage, Joe Galvin, and Aon have so much good information for you. So we on our website, under resources, have our 2019 hiring guide. It addresses 6 key trends that you need to be aware of, gives you some action items. High level, it talks about strategic HR, talks about culture and branding, talks about engagement, technology, recruiting, and social enterprise. Guess what? I just did a webinar, I can't remember when it was, I think it was in March, early March, with Joe Galvin and another speaker. His name's escaping me, I'm sorry. And we talked about the CEO projections that Vistage just put out. If you have not downloaded the CEO projections report from Vistage yet, please have that as your key takeaway from this webinar. Write that down, CEO projections. Download the report. It's a great tool. It goes hand in hand with our 2019 hiring guide, and it gives you the projections, what people are thinking about, and more importantly, what are they doing about it. Start engaging with our networks, because, and remember, I don't work for Vistage, people. I work for TalenTrust. TalenTrust is my company, but this community has so many tools for you. They have so many tools that can help you get better at what you're doing, but you got to use them. You got to get smarter. You got to start reading. I know people don't like to read anymore. They like to watch videos, but these are not hard reads. These are really insightful reads and can give you key things to do that align with your business, where you are, what you need to do, and get started with just one thing. I do realize that there's a lot to do, and technology can be your friend. There's applicant tracking systems. We like iCIMS, I mentioned it earlier, and it's ICIMS, iCIMS, ICIMS. It's an applicant tracking tool. There's also a great tool we love out there called Tiny Pulse, and it keeps the pulse on your culture, who you are, what you're doing, what your employees think about you. It allows your employees to promote, and they call it Cheers for Peers. It's a great technology. There's also a suggestion box. They benchmark your culture against other cultures in your industry. So you've got data and you can start tracking some trends. You know you do this when it comes to sales and marketing and revenue and gross margin and profitability. We all do. We're business owners. We're kind of hardwired to do that. Start using technology and data to help push the best recruitment processes. They're heavily based on data and technology. So how many sources are you working with? How many leads in? How many people are engaging with your content and your social media? It increases decision making. It can cut costs. It also gives you the ability to do market research on ideal recruiting targets, customize that marketing and communication, what's working, what's not working, because there's some marketing messaging that might not work. And technology can give you the capability to offer candidates some remote work options. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people want time and flexibility and purpose. So how can you use technology to allow people to have those kinds of advantages? It can give you a distinct competitive advantage if people can engage the way they want to, especially with the younger generations. So it's important that technology be part of your strategy. Technology can't replace, though, the human touch, the human factor. There's all kinds of people talking about, the fact that artificial intelligence is going to, and robots are going to replace people. What it will do is will help people do their job better. It's not going to replace all of the people. Maybe some, but never all, because a computer doesn't have the emotional quotient. So don't be afraid in embracing technology. If you're an HR leader here, ask yourself, what technology will enable me to be better at my job? What data do I need to move human capital to a very metrically driven function in our company that my colleagues will respect? So that goes back to one of my other points, making HR strategic in your organization. Technology can help you do that. And also, let's get faster. There's competition for people. They're moving at the speed of life. They're taking jobs, moving across countries. They're moving fast. If your hiring process takes 6 months, guess what? You've just lost a bunch of candidates. So when you're looking at the process I outlined for you, how fast can you go to make sure that you can get to yes quickly? And when you are working with hourly employees, as I know many of you are, a lot of us, there's a big percentage of Vistage members that are manufacturing and construction. You've got a lot of hourly workers. You got to move fast because they can get in their truck at 9 o'clock and have a job by 3. And if you didn't make them the offer at 10, you're out of luck. So what can you do to move faster and enable your people to make quick decisions so you can have the talent you need to grow your business? And make sure you have a sourcing process. Strategic sourcing is critical. I talked about it in the funnel. I want to reinforce it with you all. In the CEO predictions report that I talked to you about that I did with Joe Galvin, sourcing doesn't attract top performers. You can't make quality hires. So let me reiterate that. If your sourcing doesn't attract top performers, you can't make quality hires. You need various sourcing tactics, depending on the individual, the locale, and all the other factors to target those passive people. Just make sure you develop a referral program internally, and make sure your referral program rewards and motivates employees to refer the good people that they know to help you grow their business. And aim for speed and offer flexibility. Candidates are in high demand. When the right people decide to change jobs, you need to be ready to hire them because people are making decisions and they're getting scooped up. Build flexibility into your hiring decisions and offer things on contingency. Don't wait. If you know somebody's the right person, you can offer a job on many different contingent basis. So before I turn it back over to my friend Bill, I wanted to share with you that you can engage more with TalenTrust. Take out your phones, which I know are very close. They're very near to everybody. And make sure you text 44222, the word people puzzle, all run together. So go to your phones, open your text function, type in 44222, and type in the word people puzzle, no space. You can actually download our hiring guide. You can download all kinds of resources for you. You can request my book for free. I don't charge for my book. If you want to go to Amazon, you can, but you don't have to. You can connect with me, and also you can book me as a speaker at your next function, whether it be your trade function or internally to your company. Bill, I'm going to turn it back to you and open it up for questions, and I'm challenging all of you. I want a lot of questions. Bye,
Terrific
Bill.
job.
Give it back to you.
Terrific job, Kathleen. Thank you so much. Just to remind you, listeners, that you can post your questions into the questions toolbar at the right of your screen. Let's get started. Here's one quick question for you, Kathleen, is would you repeat the technology and data tools that you mentioned for applicant and hire tracking and culture, please?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry. I get excited, and I actually write down what in front of me when I talk on these webinars to slow down. So I will slow down. So an applicant tracking tool is called iCIMS. ICIMS. I is in indigo, C is in cat. Let me see. I think I'm spelling it right. ICIMS. Yeah. I is in indigo, C is in cat, I is in indigo, M is in Mary, S is in Sam. That's an applicant tracking tool. Love it. It's great. You can customize it. The next tool I love is Tiny Pulse, TINY Pulse. And that is a great culture engagement tool that I love. And if you want more information, I can give it to you. So those are two I absolutely think are awesome.
Excellent. Okay. And here's another question for you, Kathleen. Do you have examples of some successful culture questions?
Oh, yeah, we got a library of culture questions. So I don't have them in front of me, but what I could do is I could, if anybody wants, they can, I can send, well, here's a great place to start. One of the best culture questions is the Net Promoter Score question. And Harvard established a Net Promoter Score question, which is more external facing, but we retool it, and it's called the Net Promoter Score. So here's a key question. How likely are you to refer someone to work for our company, and why, on a scale of 0 to 10? It will tell you how many people are promoters or detractors in your environment. That's a key question. The other thing you can do is Google the Q12, Q is in Quinn, 12, number 12, from Gartner. Gallup, I'm sorry, from Gallup. The Q12 from Gallup. The Gallup suggests those are the 12 key questions you need to know about everybody who works for you. So those are two great places to start.
All right. Terrific. Thank you. What is the first step to making HR strategic, Kathleen?
Well, first you have to realize what your biases. If you're a business owner, what are your own filters and biases about HR? There's been really awful articles written about HR. Fast Company wrote an article said why we hate HR. Harvard Business Review actually wrote an article that we have to blow up HR. And let's face it, and I'm sorry if there's HR people on the phone, because I love you, I'm promoting you, you can tell. But HR kind of sometimes does it to themselves. So step one is, what is your relationship with human capital HR within your company? Recognize that it's an important business function. Step two, do you have the right person to do that job? And that's a key question. I was presenting at the end of the year last year to Hub International, and I was presenting to an audience of human capital people. And one woman raised her hand who was an HR leader and said, well, what if you don't have permission to do what you're telling us to do? And you can imagine, Bill, I was like, oh my God. I went over, I wanted to hug her, and I wanted to tell her she needed to take the reins. Sometimes what companies are waiting for you, if you're an HR person, they're waiting for you to take the reins. So take them. If you're strategic, just take those reins. And if you're a business leader and you have somebody who you know don't even know where the reins are, then you need to upgrade.
Great input. Thank you so much. Here's another question. We've tried phantom stock and deferred compensation to retain our key employees, and we still don't seem to be able to hold on to employees. Is there anything else out there that's state of the art for retaining key employees that you've seen?
I would suggest you need a gap analysis to figure out what's going on. Our company conducts gap analysis, and you can get it somewhere else too, but it's not about the money. The fourth or fifth reason that people leave organizations are money. The first couple of reasons they leave are people, either their hiring manager, the person they report to, or the CEO or a VP, or the guy or gal sitting next to them that's pissing them off. So it's not about, we find it's not about money. We just did a gap analysis for one of our clients, and the investment is not a lot of money, in my opinion. It's $9,500, and we give a 20% discount to Vistage members. So it's a good diagnostic to know what's going on in your company. And we usually find things like communication, recognition, really things that you can fix. We just did this for one of our clients, and we found that communication was why people were leaving. Isn't that amazing that just communication is why people would be leaving your organization? But it can be something simple, and then you're overcomplicating it, trying to give them more money. They really just want you to recognize the good work that they're doing. So whoever that is, whoever asked that question, it might be time for you to look under the rug and find out what's really going on. Because I'm 99% sure after 30 years in this industry, it ain't about the money.
Good point. How do I work with HR to train them on the new processes?
Well, first, go back to my first answer. Let's make sure you have the right person. Because sometimes people aren't trainable. Because, I mean, HR people generally are not marketing and sales people. Can we all agree to that?
Yes.
Bill, do you agree with me? Yeah. So traditionally, they're not. So you might not have the right person. And sometimes, even if you train somebody, they're just not going to operate that way. So I would use assessments to see if they have the right people in that seat. And if you don't, change that seat. And that person might be able to stay in the company in another role. Not saying you let them go necessarily. But they might not love this. And I got to tell you, I have met so many human capital people who absolutely hate recruitment. Don't assume because somebody's an HR human capital person that they like recruiting. This is hard stuff, and it's sales and marketing. So it's no wonder there's this gap there. Let's not, you can't train somebody to do something they don't like to do.
Good point. Okay, so here's another question I just got. We're working towards improving our onboarding process. And I'm hearing you say it takes 6 months to onboard new hires successfully. And where can I find tools to improve our onboarding experience, which I feel is key to get employees engaged from the beginning?
I totally agree with you. So if you wanted, you're welcome to call me, and I can help you a little bit. Obviously, companies hire us to do this as well, but Google is your friend. So you might want to start and do some research online on I would put into the search engine, best onboarding practices. Start there, and if you need more help, call me.
Excellent. Kathleen, we've done many Fridays with Vistage webinars together, and I would encourage our listeners to dig through the archives at Fridays with Vistage. And once again, thank you so much for your great insights and wonderful information today.
Thank you, Bill. It's been my absolute pleasure. Have a lovely weekend, everybody.
And thank you for attending today's webinar. We invite you to join us for our next webinar focusing on talent management, entitled 7 Common HR Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. That will be on April 12th, again at 10 a.m. Pacific time. You can register for any of our webinars at vistage.com/FWV. FWV is in Fridays with Vistage. On behalf of Vistage Worldwide, this is Bill Black thanking you for joining us today and wishing you continued success. This concludes today's webinar.